Long Neck Sports Grill is the place to be this football season with 3 very easy-to-get-to locations in Northern Kentucky, 4K TVs all over the place, and the sound always on for the big games. Long Neck's menu has something for everybody, but you've got to try the wings. And no place has a better beer selection than Long Neck's. Each location is very easy to get to, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. And don't forget, Long Neck Sports Grill is the home of the Round Table Show. This football season, you've got to get to Long Neck's. Stay late. Come often. By the way, Jamar Chase, a no-go at Bengals practice today with the back. That brings us to our friend Dr. Nick Gates from OrthoCincy. We do this every single Wednesday, usually with a pretty heavy NFL focus. One of the experts from OrthoCincy talking injuries with us. The great thing about OrthoCincy is they have specialists and locations all over the tri-state, and they also offer walk-in orthopedic urgent care at 5 tri-state locations with extended evening and weekend hours in Edgewood and Anderson. The staff at Anderson treating my daughter's broken foot has been awesome. Learn more at OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Dr. Nick Gates is with us, and your specialty are feet, Achilles, ankles, and I have questions about 2 different athletes dealing with Achilles injuries. But let's start with Jamar Chase. So didn't practice today. He acknowledged soreness in his back. He fell unprotected trying to make a catch in that game against the Buffalo Bills. There's no real official diagnosis, so let's start with that. What are the range of possibilities the medical staff might be dealing with here?
I think his status of day-to-day is unfortunately the best they're going to be able to do. I witnessed that injury live, as well as many of us watched it a couple of times on replay. Landing directly on his back. You could call that, the appearance of that, a severe back contusion. I'm sure he was trying to guard himself, a back muscle strain or sprain, but that's going to be awful sore. I was not surprised to hear about that later, even though he tried to play a little bit later in the game. I think the day-to-day is the best you're going to get from them and probably from me, because it's sore. When you try to move around, it's sore on a day-to-day basis after that, and there's a certain level of comfort he's got to get to before he can play football.
So I've had a sore back. I've never played in an NFL game, but I've had a sore back, and the remedy is always, rest. Don't lift anything heavy, that sort of stuff. Are there treatments for Jamar that go beyond that?
Without a doubt. And truthfully, a little bit of rest goes a long way, but with a low back pain or a low back injury, really the state of the art is going to be early rehab, gentle protected motion, and really not sitting around too much. In the old days, they put you on bed rest for back pain. That's certainly not going to happen now. So I'm sure he's working with his athletic trainers and therapists on modalities to stretch and move and keep moving within the degrees of comfort. So it's really very much a rehabilitative thing along with the rest.
Is the question about him playing answered by how much pain he's able to sort of withstand?
I think they're likely being very truthful on that. And the hazarding a guess, he's had some studies, perhaps at least X-rays, perhaps even an MRI, to make sure nothing more serious is going on. So it's really going to be a comfort level. He's got to be comfortable enough to perform, number one. He's got to be comfortable enough to protect himself. Those are the 2 things we're looking for.
All right, I want to ask you about an Achilles injury suffered by Cam Akers, now of the Minnesota Vikings. He has a left Achilles tear, suffered it in the game that he played on Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons. He tore his right Achilles in 2021. This is his 4th year in the league. He's had multiple Achilles injuries. Let's do this. Even though it's a term that we hear and use a lot, I still think there are folks listening to us who might not know what the Achilles tendon is and what it does, so go ahead and explain.
All right. The Achilles tendon is simply the tendon that attaches the majority of your calf muscle to the back of your heel, which allows you to push off. It allows you to push off when you run. That calf muscle is the main strength to push off when you jump, when you run, and when you land. So it's really the cord or tendon that allows your calf muscle to do its job. When it's torn, you have no calf muscle to do the work.
There are times when we're watching at home and, we'll see an athlete where they ultimately determine that he or she is dealing with an Achilles injury, but initially you see them walking on the sideline and it feels like they might re-enter competition. When you're on the sideline and you're examining these athletes or even just watching from a distance, is this usually an injury that you could diagnose almost immediately?
you have a pretty good idea in the videos, say of Aaron Rodgers earlier. I didn't see a video of Akers, but you have a pretty good idea when you see their response, even though they can stand up and walk. It is very accurate to say it is possible to walk with a torn Achilles tendon. You can bear weight. Your bones are intact. You can walk. You can see they don't walk right, and they're feeling sore. The close-up video is always interesting because you can actually, if they catch the right video in the right spot, you can actually see the muscle spasm occur. Once that tendon ruptures, that muscle just shortens and contracts. And you can see that sometimes on the video. But their response to that, you can see them get up and try to walk, but it's different than a strain where they kind of walk it off.
So this is his second Achilles injury. He had one on the right side 2 years ago. Now it's on the left side. Are there just some athletes and some people who are more vulnerable to this type of injury, or are we dealing with something here that is unfortunately an unlucky coincidence?
I think it's highly likely this is an unlucky coincidence for Cam Akers. I don't know his history. Obviously, there are some conditions. There are some medical conditions. There are some even medications, and there's even some perhaps immunocompromised situations where there are some patients who have a higher risk of tearing tendons, be it their Achilles tendons or other ones. Those are relatively rare and not common to see in the athletic population. Unfortunately, the most likely culprit, unless there's something in his medical history I don't know, is the most likely culprit is bad luck.
Well, we've all dealt with that. Let's stay with an Achilles injury and talk about Aaron Rodgers. So he suffers an Achilles injury in the first game, fourth play of the first game. And a lot of us assume, well, we're not going to see him the rest of the season. And maybe because of his age, he's going to turn 40 in December. His career is going to be over. And yet he is talking openly about coming back and playing this season. This feels almost miraculous, and I think relative to what most of us expected back in September, extraordinarily unlikely. So from your perspective, somebody who deals with this injury all the time, is the prospect of him playing as sort of out there as many of us kind of tend to think that it is?
I think it's out there as many of us think so. And if you read his comments, he walked back his initial comment a little bit, and he realized he is an energetic, aggressive athlete, but even he walked back his original comments. I would tell you that it's certainly possible for him to return and play professional football. The timeline that he hinted at, it was even in the 3-month or 3.5 month category, is very unlikely and not common. Is it possible? Sure. With great healing and an incredible attention to physical therapy and detail, could you do it? You could. I've had athletes look pretty darn good at 3 or 4 months to play at the NFL level. You're talking about moving around the pocket, sprinting out while 300-pound defensive linemen are chasing you. That's pretty high level. So the old timeline of 9 to 12 months rehab to play has probably been shortened more effectively to 6 to 9 months with modern techniques and modern aggressive rehab. But boy, to shorten that to 3 months would be pretty, like you said, miraculous.
Can you give me an idea of the specific factors that are being weighed here, that are being considered when you're looking at an injury like this and evaluating whether or not a guy can come back sooner than expected?
It's all about calf strength. As we mentioned at the beginning of this, your Achilles tendon is the end of your calf muscle, and he tore it. So at that moment, he has no calf muscle. That muscle atrophies pretty rapidly at the time of injury, and has to be protected during the recovery. So atrophy or weakening of the calf muscle occurs in 100% of people with that injury during the recovery. Persistent atrophy or weakness in that muscle occurs in a high percentage of patients and athletes, even when they're tested 3 and 6 months later. So the thing they're working on is how do they get his calf muscle strong? And the bottom line, it's repetitive, consistent physical therapy approaches. There's no magic pill. The procedure is done. The tendon heals. He's got to do a very consistent job of getting his calf strength back. And when that is there, there's comfort, there's protection, there's confidence. So calf strength is the key.
Excellent insight. I knew you were the guy to ask these questions. I appreciate the time, man. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure. We'll call anytime.
There you go. Dr. Nick Gates from OrthoCincy. Great thing about OrthoCincy is they have specialist locations all over the tri-state. This includes walk-in orthopedic urgent care during the week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and then on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at both Edgewood and Anderson. It's easier because you don't need an appointment, and it is most definitely cheaper than going to an ER when you have an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. And again, I could speak firsthand experience with my daughter's recessed broken foot injury. The folks at OrthoCincy, specifically at the Anderson location, have been awesome. Looking for a place to watch all the games with your buddies this football season? You've got to stop by Long Neck Sports Grill. There are 3 locations, each one of them with 4K TVs all over the place, and the sound is always on for the big games. And you've heard me talk about Long Neck's menu, but have you tried the wings? What are you waiting for? And no place has a better beer selection than Long Neck's. And don't forget, Long Neck Sports Grill is also home of the Roundtable Show. Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood, each one of them awesome. Long Neck Sports Grill. This football season, stay late, come often.